up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the DNF podcast with your girl Crystal. Hope you are having a wonderful day, or night, or noon, or evening, or morning, or whenever you're listening to this or watching this. Yeah, I was actually going to record this episode on Monday, and it is Thursday. And the reason that I didn't was because your girl was heated. I was ready to throw down. In my head. I even had like a skit that I wanted to do, and I was just like, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna say that. But I said, oh, Crystal, hold on, take a step back, breathe, talk to your internet friends who also support the same driver that you do. Let's feel the vibe. What are we feeling? And then I kind of was just like, yeah, I can't come on here and go pop, 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 pop. It wouldn't be fair to myself, because then I'd probably look back on it and be like, why did I say that? So that's why I'm filming today. Now this week's episode is gonna be mostly or solely focused on Formula One. I will probably talk about football maybe towards the end, but there's so much that I want to talk about for Brazil, and I don't know where to begin, right? I'll begin with the fact that I went into the weekend with a lot of hope, right? I was like, okay, we're only 1 point behind. It's okay. Like we'll be able to make this up. Like it won't be that hard. Um, it'll probably go to the wire. And then when we were in our first free practice and only practice of the weekend, it just seemed like I was like, oh, he's gelling with the car. Okay. We're like the hopium was real. And I mean, Max was threatening for a little bit. For a second, I thought the Ferraris might threaten for a little bit. Mercedes for sure was on it this weekend. I feel like as they typically are in Brazil. I don't feel like that's kind of like a odd thing for it to happen to them. Um, so I was so positive. And then of course he still qualifies in the top three for the sprint. And then we have a DNF in the sprint. And it's just like I look back and I'm like, another DNF in a sprint. Like for a driver who completed um every lap, I think last season, I don't think he DNF'd. I think, don't quote me on it, but I think it was like the most laps or completed, to then having three DNFs in a span of 2.5 months. It was gut-wrenching to just see that happen. Um, and kind of just to see, like, in that moment, see him really deflate within himself. It was just a weekend to forget. And I actually wrote down some notes for the race after the race, because I was like, I titled it Notes from Today's Race. And I'm gonna read exactly what I put. I'm like, Max is literally one of the greatest of all times. I mean, you can't lie. So, first of all, Max doesn't make it out of Q1, and it's not because of a red flag this time. It's literally due to pace. And then they decide to start from the pit lane. They're like, we're gonna rebuild this car for you, Max. We got you, broski. And the fact that he ended on the podium, my guy. The fact that he led the race for a little bit too. Hello, yes. Um, my next note was Adami, I think his name, but Lewis's race engineer, so Ricky, needs to be replaced. Lewis needs a new race engineer. Um, I still stand by that, and I've been standing by that since Miami. I think for me, it's just I let it slide in Australia, and I say that like I have any power, but I let it slide in Australia, and I said, you know what, this is their first race together. Like, it's okay. We need to see how they gel. They have to figure out what their vibe is going to be, and they have to figure that out too, because Lewis has been with Bono for I don't know how many years. And then we go into Shanghai, and it's just like, okay, yeah, maybe it was just Australia. And then ever since then, it hasn't worked out for Lewis. And then you go and you listen to his onboards, and he's asking the same questions 3 to 4 times, and he's not getting a response. And all he gets is the, yep, very good lap. very nice. And it's like, no, he's asking you a question. He's asking you like, hey, what's the delta time? Hey, like what do I need to be doing? Where am I missing out on? And it doesn't seem like a Don or Ricky is giving him anything. So I I don't necessarily say fire Ricky from Ferrari, but maybe replace him as Lewis's race engineer and find somebody else because I think that's important to have that type of communication where you ask your race engineer and he's able to answer you. One of probably my favorite race engineers and driver pairings is Charles and his race engineer. I think they're so funny, but he also communicates very well. Um, and I mean, even now you can see Bono with Kimi throughout the season. They've learned together because, of course, Bono has to learn and figure out how Kimi learns and how to relay information to Kimi because it's not going to be the same as it was for Lewis. So the fact that it just doesn't seem like Lewis and Ricky click, it's just at this point. And then we can talk about it. The fact that Elkan decides to say that the drivers need to like just shut up and drive and like let it's the race engineers who are building a fantastic car. It's the people on track who are providing no. Adrian Newey said he's like, no, you need to hear the feedback of your drivers because there's one, they're the ones who are driving the car, and two, they're the only ones in the world who can explain like, hey, this is what we need to do, like, hey, I think this will work out, because if they're not giving you feedback, they're just going to drive a soapbox and you're going to end in P19 and P20 every single time. And then they're going to ask you like, whoa, what's happening? I thought you had the best race engineers. I thought you had the best aerodynamic team, like whatever. Why isn't your car working? Are you asking feedback from your drivers? No. So I think he needs to just and like go be or a CEO. You go do that, but don't go commenting on stuff that one you really don't. I don't say you don't know about, but like if you've never driven an F1 car, if you're not a Formula One driver, then don't talk to a Formula One driver like they don't know what they're talking about. Especially someone who's a seven-time world champion. Okay, my next one is why is it that Kimi did not receive a penalty? He left no space for Oscar. Where was Oscar to go? So I looked at every single onboard that I could possibly look at. So I looked at Charles, I looked at Kimi's, I looked at Oscar's, I looked at Lando's, and I looked at not George's. I think it was one of the Racing Bulls. I looked at every single angle that I could possibly look at to justify a 10-second time penalty. I know some of you are going to be like, I don't see anything that Oscar didn't deserve a time penalty. No, shut up and listen to what I'm going to say. I read the FIA documents and it said that he lost control of the car. I was looking at his onboard and I said, even with the lockup, he didn't really like lose control. There was no understeer, there was no oversteer. So I was like, okay, like where he braked because he saw that Kimi was not going to give him the space. What was he to do in that situation? Like I genuinely like want to know, because if he hadn't braked and he would have kept going, him and Kimi would have taken each other out. He brakes because he realizes that Kimi is not going to give him any space. Mind you, Kimi has a big old gap to get like from Charles to himself. Charles is minding his own business. And then because Kimi decides to, oh, I need to close the door immediately on Oscar, even though Oscar was already there. Yes, Oscar was not ahead at the apex. He was not ahead of Kimi. But yet, I think as a racing driver, you also have to have like conscious thoughts and you also have to be smart and be like, well, there's somebody on the inside. Charles is over there. There's not really anybody on the outside right here. I think if I just scooch on over, then I will be able to like give Oscar space. I won't get hit. I won't hit Charles. And then we can battle it out. And it would have been a great battle between the three of them for P2 because they were so close. I agree with what Charles said. Because Oscar was not ahead of the apex, I do think that he should have gotten a penalty. However, 10 seconds is ridiculous. And to not give Kimi anything either is even more ridiculous. But at the end of the day, Kimi hitting Charles is the reason that Charles is not in the race, because Kimi was not smart in that situation. I know it's going to come with experience. That's why I was in the moment. I was heated. I was like, "Gah!" But at the same time, I'm not going to use that excuse for much longer because we're heading towards the end of their rookie season, and you have driven enough to know when to give somebody space and when not to give anybody space. So for me, that ruined the race. But also, what ruined the race was, why didn't McLaren fight this penalty? And I'm not saying like they could have easily said, hey, like we'll accept a penalty, but 10 seconds is nuts. Like I think we should split the fault here and give five to Kimi, five to Oscar, and call it even. Um, but they didn't fight it. And then right afterwards, Andrea Stella was like, we didn't see anything wrong with it. And that really, really, really irked me. And I'll get into that here in a second. But also, why didn't they go on a more aggressive strategy? At this point, he had nothing to lose. Like everybody was kind of commenting, like, why would he do that move at the restart of a safety car? Like, why would he do that? You do that whenever you're fighting for a championship. That's how you win championships. Like you have to be willing to take those risks. And you have to also understand that people around you won't care if they're not fighting. So but yeah, McLaren decided to a two stop, and I was just like, what are we doing here? Like why are we doing this? Like I genuinely want to know, like, what was the thought process? And even he came on the radio and he was like, I hope you guys are feeling a lot better about this strategy than I am, because I don't feel all that confident about it. And I was sitting there thinking, like, Tom, what are we doing? Like, how are we going to help Oscar get within the podium contention? Like, and it didn't feel like they gave him the tools or even the backing to try and go for it. And even so, I genuinely, like genuinely would love to know, why did they tell Lando about Oscar's penalty before letting Oscar know about his own penalty? Because, and mind you, I watch his onboards. Like when I'm watching the Formula One race, I'm listening to his radio. I'm not listening to what the commentators are saying. I have his onboard and I'm watching the race. So I get to see whenever they like pull up the 5-second penalty or the 10-second penalties, or when someone is being investigated or something is noted. Now, Tom didn't even tell Oscar that he was being noted um for the incident. He didn't even tell him he was being investigated by it, right? Which a part of me is like, okay, I kind of can understand that, because you don't want to like piss your driver off. You don't want him to drive in anger and frustration. Okay. But I don't see, why does Lando Norris need to know that Oscar Piastri is receiving a 10-second time penalty? It doesn't affect him. You're in the race lead. Whatever happens to Oscar, it's behind you. Also, why does his team, is he his race strategist? Like, why? Like, genuinely, why? Like, if someone could really explain to me and in simple terms, I would gladly like retract what I'm saying. But matter of fact is they didn't tell Oscar first. They told Lando. And I'm like, I'm like, whatever, we move on from there. But also, it was never encouraging. Like, I never heard, I mean, yes, Tom came on the radio and he was like, that was a great lap, mate. And that was it. But never was like, hey, we're going to do this to try to get you back into podium contention. We're going to try to get you back into, try to get you the win. Because even in situations where, the best one that I can give you is Hungary of this year, where Lando Norris beats Oscar Piastri, but he's put on a different and an aggressive strategy. However, and this is when Oscar has outqualified his teammate, has then taken the lead. And according to McLaren, it's, we're always going to prioritize and we're going to give the better strategy to the person who is qualified or who is ahead in the race. that doesn't happen. Then we can look at Belgium. Again, Lando secured pole, Oscar P2, and when the race starts, Oscar overtakes, gets put on the mediums when he pits for the first time. And what does the other side of the garage decide to do? They decide to pit Lando and put him on hards. I love it, right? I love that they do that because that's what essentially we want to see, but we want to see it all the way around. Like if you're going to do that for Lando, you have to do the same. I believe you have to do the same for Oscar, especially if you're doing this stupid. We have two number one drivers. We don't have preference one over the other, but I'm not saying that they do. But from an outside perspective, that's what it looks like. It looks like anytime Lando has somewhat been behind or on the back foot, it seems that his team is able to provide him a strategy that can either get him the win or the podium. And yet, when it's on the other side of the garage with his teammate, with Oscar, it's we're going to get you to P5. And that's it. So I don't know. And then days later, we hear Andrea Stella saying that the penalty was harsh. It's probably going to be one of the only nice things that I will ever say about Christian Horner. But if there's one thing that I can appreciate about Christian Horner is the fact that that man went to bat for his drivers, especially for Max. And he literally, whenever we were even in Jeddah this year, he pulled a Toto Wolff. I have it printed out, So the fact that it doesn't seem that they give that energy to Oscar, and I know that Lando really Lando hasn't gotten any time penalties this season. So we haven't really been able to see, but it just I don't know. There's that. Let's see here. I'm still reading my notes. I did put again, I was angry when I wrote this. So I said, does Tom Stallard need to be replaced as a race engineer, or what's going on with the strategy for Oscar's side of the garage? Because it never feels like they're setting him up for success. It's always to come second best. So just kind of reiterating. Another wonderful weekend for Ollie Behrman. Yes, he had a fantastic weekend. A great weekend for Pierre Gasly, getting a point in the sprint and also in the race. I feel like Brazil is another one of those tracks that Pierre seems to do very good at. So and then my final note, like from what I wrote on Sunday, was they should honestly not get rid of the sprint in Brazil. And I'm like, yeah, just switch. Y'all are taking it away to give us Singapore. I don't want that. Continue to let us have Brazil, please. But yeah, and then let's talk about top 10. Obviously, Lando wins, Kimi second, Max third from a pit lane start. Oh my gosh, that man is goated. George Russell in fourth, Oscar in fifth, Ollie sixth, Liam seventh, and Isaac in eighth. Congratulations on the Racing Bulls for double points. Nico again in the points in ninth place, and in 10th, of course, Pierre Gasly, with Alex Albon missing out on points by one. I mean, also Alex was when he came on the radio, he didn't seem to be having a great weekend. So now we're at a deficit of 24 points. And I honestly was like, it's over. Like on Sunday, I was like, it's so over, but it's okay. It's so over. And then I really started to like stew in everything that has happened this season. And I really started to like reflect on the growth of Oscar. And I kind of have come to peace and have come to terms that more than likely the way that things are going, and obviously we're going to Vegas next, and it's not a strong McLaren track, but essentially it looks like Lando Norris is winning this championship. And for me, of course, I'm heartbroken because I'm like, dude, to have Oscar lead for so long, and then for, Baku to happen, and then Singapore, and then Austin, Mexico, and then Brazil, like that's just so much. Like it was gut-wrenching, but then I started to think, I'm like, I can't complain because also this is his first year fighting for a driver's championship. If we look back at other people who have fought for a driver's championship for the first time and like have led for a majority of the races, I think probably the most prominent person, and everybody will know who I'm talking about, is Lewis. And I know that Lewis was a rookie and you can't really correlate in that sense, but it was also his first time. And because of incidents that were also kind of out of his control, he did lose the drivers' championship in what was 2007, and then in 2008 he won. And then obviously we now know who Lewis Hamilton is. He's a 7-time world champion, and some say he's an 8-time world champion. I'm incredibly proud of the progress that he's made, the achievements that he has taken this season, the growth. Also just even hearing him on the podcast, I think it was like Off the Grid or something, the one that they do for Formula One. And he talked, even the way that he was talking, he was just like, if it doesn't happen, he's like, I'm going to take so many lessons from this season and I'm going to continue to apply it. So the reason that I like compare Lewis and Oscar is for this reason. It's in 2007, Lewis was leading, like I said before, all of that happens. And then there was a regulation change in 2008. And Lewis wins in 2008. And that's kind of like where I'm putting the connections is we're heading into a new regulation. We don't know how strong McLaren's going to be. We don't know how well these drivers are also going to adapt to this car. This can completely like put the grid on its head, but it could also be that next year could be Oscar Piastri's season and it could be his chance to win the drivers championship. I will give my flowers to Lando Norris and say like I never discounted him despite like the DNF and Zandvoort. There was a moment where I was feeling a lot more confident that we were most likely going to win, but I was like, I can't sleep on him, especially because I knew that Coda and Mexico were going to be tough tracks for Oscar. And I was right. Um, However, I didn't think I was going to be this right in the fact that we would lose the lead. I'm incredibly proud of him. Not everybody can handle that type of pressure. Um, Even though you are an F1 driver, but not everybody can do it. So kudos to him for it being his first time. Now we're heading off to Vegas. And like I said, Vegas is not a track that suits McLaren, but we shall see. Honestly, I'm with Crofty on this. I really want a double Ferrari podium, whether it's Lewis or Charles winning. I don't care, but I would just really like it so they could essentially give a middle finger to their CEO and just be like, um, but yeah, that's that's really it. I don't know how much emotion I put into this, but I was feeling very, very passionate about what happened this weekend. Some exciting news. So next week is Vegas, and as of today, I will be there. So next week's episode is gonna look a little bit different. I probably won't. Well, I probably will film the episode maybe like on a Monday because I might do a Vegas vlog. I don't know. Should I bet? No, I'm not gonna gamble. Let's talk a little bit about the F part of DNF. What an exciting weekend for me for being a Manchester City fan because tell me why we beat Liverpool 3-0. Remember, I told you guys last week that City does this thing where they win 2 in a row and then they lose the next one. Debbie Downer over here was like, it's okay. It's just going to happen. Let the inevitable happen. I know that we're playing at home, but it's just. And then it was like, goal, goal. And then goal. I was just like, whoa, what is happening? So it was great to see City win against Liverpool. Also it was fantastic to see Sunderland tie against Arsenal, and I was like suck it, Arsenal. But I was also very happy for Sunderland because they played a very good game. That was a very, very good game. But right now we are in the international break, meaning we don't have any Premier League or La Liga or any UEFA Champions League games. But it's the last international break before we head into 2026, and we know what next year lies, which is the World Cup. So that's exciting. Anyways, you guys, that is it for today's episode of the DNF podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. I appreciate every single one of you who have viewed my videos. I still find it a little weird just yapping to myself, but it is very much appreciated. And I will be back next week for my Las Vegas predictions and to update you in the football realm. All right, see ya. Peace.